Hello fellow time travelers, tonight we sail into smoky skies and shattered kingdoms chasing a piece of lost history rarely discussed in modern times. You are standing at the edge of a sunlit Bronze Age harbor. The water glints like melted coin, and all around you, life hums, merchants shouting over amphorae, oxen clopping over cobbles, scribes hunched over clay tablets. The ancient world is booming. Empires like Egypt, Hatti, Mycenae, and Ugarit strut proudly across the map. They've got kings, palaces, war chariots, even functioning international diplomacy. Everything feels solid, eternal. And then, sails. Black sails. Unfamiliar shapes on the horizon. Whole fleets of them, inching closer like a bad dream in slow motion. You squint against the sun. You don't recognize the flags. In fact, there are no flags. Just shadowy ships, low in the water, packed with people who don't seem like they've come to trade figs and friendship. You don't know it yet, but you've just locked eyes with the sea peoples. Cities will fall. Trade networks will crumble. Languages will vanish. The entire Bronze Age, this golden age of interconnected, glorious chaos, will grind to a halt because of these strangers. Or at least, they'll help push it off the cliff. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and ring that bell so you'll always know when we are off to a new time-traveling adventure together. In return, I promise to stand out by offering you the most interesting and valuable content guaranteed to help you drift off to a peaceful sound sleep. Now tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's time-traveling adventure together. The shoreline ahead flickers with torches. The year is around 1200 BC. You've arrived just before the world begins to burn. At first, there are only rumors. Whispers along the trade routes. A port city here gets raided. A caravan there goes missing. A palace official in Cyprus swears he saw a foreign ship land and unload not goods, but warriors. Still, you brush it off. After all, you live in the late Bronze Age. This is the golden era of writing, diplomacy, and cross-continental alliances. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everything. The sea peoples don't show up with helpful introductions. No scrolls. No peace offerings. Just fire. You see it first in Anatolia. Small villages are found gutted, smoking. Then comes Hattusa, the capital of the mighty Hittite Empire, gone. You didn't think entire empires could just vanish overnight, but now you're starting to reassess. The archaeologists of your future will dig up layers of soot and silence. Entire cities go from bustling to barren. No rebuild. No cleanup. Just poof. It's as if the pause button on civilization gets slapped hard by a sooty, calloused hand. And no one knows who swung the hand. That's the thing. Even centuries later, with all your future books and smart devices, we still don't know exactly who the sea peoples were. They left behind hardly any written record. No memoirs, no manifestos. Just bones, burn marks, and some cryptic reliefs from panicked kings trying to hold their borders. You begin to notice patterns. Cities along the coastlines go dark one by one, like lights blinking out in a thunderstorm. You hear that Ugarit, once a crown jewel of Canaan, sent a desperate letter asking for help, but it arrived too late. By the time the message was read, the city had already been destroyed. That's like posting a cry for help and getting the reply during the funeral. Trade slows, then stops. The Mediterranean goes quiet, not a good quiet. A chilling quiet. No ships bringing tin from the east, or copper from Cyprus, which means no bronze. And when your entire civilization relies on bronze for tools, weapons, and bling, that's a serious logistical oopsie. You begin to understand that these sea peoples aren't just pirates. They're not raiding and running. They're obliterating and moving in. Some carry their families, livestock, entire communities loaded onto ships. Which makes you wonder, are they invaders or desperate migrants? Historians still debate whether this was a calculated invasion or a messy mass movement caused by famine, war, or climate disaster. The truth? Might be all of the above. You're walking now through a wrecked port town, stepping over charred beams and shattered pottery. Something here once smelled of sea salt and roasted fish. Now, it reeks of ash. You spot strange spear tips, shorter than local designs, barbed in weird places. Foreign, just like the people who wielded them. And then you find something odd, a small, melted figurine of a god no one in this region worships. It's got wide eyes and curling horns. Not Egyptian, not Canaanite, not Hittite. Something else. The sea peoples didn't just bring swords. They brought stories, cultures, maybe even revenge. Did their homeland fall to drought or war? Did they take to the sea out of necessity or conquest? You wish someone had left a better diary. One quirky tidbit for your pillow tonight. One theory suggests these people may have included groups like the Shiaden, Shekelesh, and Peleset. Some scholars think Peleset later became the Philistines, which, if true, means these sea marauders eventually settled down, bought real estate, and started squabbling with biblical heroes. Nothing says new neighborhood like a war with ancient Israelites. Meanwhile, back in the moment, you lean on a toppled pillar and exhale. Your world is changing faster than a melting popsicle in the Egyptian sun. The sea peoples aren't finished. They're just getting started. You wake to the sharp scent of smoke. Not campfire cozy, marshmallow toast smoke, but the heavy, bitter kind that clings to rubble and makes your eyes sting before you even open them. You're somewhere near the coast, but the sky above you is not blue. It's smeared in the dusky gray of buildings that used to exist. You trudge forward, crunching over pottery shards and twisted bronze. Each step feels like walking on the bones of yesterday's optimism. This was once a city, an actual city. Temples, marketplaces, sturdy stone homes. Now, a windswept ruin. The kind tourists of the future will Instagram with captions like a haunting reminder. But for you, there's no haunting. It's just the smell, the silence, and the missing people. The sea peoples have struck again. You're not even sure which group did it. There's no calling card. Just the same familiar trail of collapsed walls and broken alliances. No one expected it to happen this fast. First one city, then another, and another. It's not a war anymore. It's a pattern. And you're caught in it. Your sandaled feet take you past a toppled statue, once a proud king, now headless and buried up to his knees in dust. A scribble on a blackened wall reads like graffiti left in panic, "They came from the sea." That's it. No name. No country. Just they. It started in places like Alasia and Ugarit. Both coastal hubs. Both torched. Then the fire spread inland. Hattusa, the great capital of the Hittites, is now a ghost. And not even the spooky kind with creaky floorboards. No, this ghost whispers only one phrase, "It happened fast." It's like watching dominoes fall, except each domino is a civilization. The Mycenaean cities of mainland Greece? Gone. Their palaces, those storied places where scribes once inked out records on linear B tablets, lie cracked and empty. Pylos, Tyrins, even mighty Mycenae itself. Each toppled with eerie synchronicity. You wander into one and find an oven still full of charred grain. Dinner interrupted forever. Historians agree this wasn't a series of unrelated collapses. Something, someone, connected them. The invaders didn't just loot and leave. In many cases, they wiped out the infrastructure completely. No more records. No rebuilding. In Pylos, a thick layer of destruction sits atop everything. No signs of survivors. Just fire-blackened ruins and one single, heartbreaking artifact. A Linear B tablet hastily scrawled with inventory of military supplies. Spears, arrows, chariots. The last to-do list before the city was erased. You'd like to imagine the scribe made it out, tablet tucked under one arm. But if they did, they never told the tale. And you? You just keep walking. You reach a coastal bluff and look out. Below you is another city burning, its streets glowing like veins of lava. Screams float up faintly on the wind. You should go help. But what would you do? Throw a pine cone? Ask them politely to stop conquering? Instead, you just watch. The Sea Peoples don't seem to have a formal name, at least not one they left behind. The term comes from Egyptian records. The Egyptians called them foreigners from the sea or northerners from all lands. That's like naming a band distant guys doing stuff. Not terribly helpful. But the Egyptians got something right. These people were from somewhere else. And they were everyone's problem. Sometimes, they hit ports with such precision it's like they were using ancient GPS. Other times, they just wander in like a bizarre pop-up apocalypse. Some ride in on ships shaped like crescent moons. Others march inland, dragging loot and livestock, leaving entire communities flattened in their wake. And their victims? It's not just kingdoms and soldiers who suffer. It's the average fishmonger, the candlemaker, the teenager who just figured out how to write fart in cuneiform. Ordinary lives vanish. You find yourself in a valley near Troy. Yes, that Troy. But don't expect to bump into Helen or any well-muscled Brad Pitts. This version of Troy is nearing its end. Historians still wonder if the Trojan War myth was tangled up in this broader age of chaos. Could Homer's epic be a poetic echo of real, pan-Mediterranean collapse? It's possible. Or maybe just another bedtime exaggeration gone viral. Still, there's evidence Troy fell hard. You peek into the shattered walls and see signs of fierce battle, arrowheads embedded in doorways, skeletons clutching daggers, rooftops caved in. A city built for defense, brought down from within or without, no one can say. But the timing? Suspiciously convenient. Here's something for your late-night pondering. Some of the Sea Peoples wore horned helmets. Not Viking style, more like spaghetti strainers with flair. Imagine charging into battle looking like you raided your aunt's kitchen cabinet. Fashion-wise, not subtle. But effective, apparently. Your eyes catch something glinting near a collapsed gate. It's a bronze pendant shaped like a fish. Too small to be military. Probably a good luck charm. Too bad it didn't work. You pocket it. Just in case. And as you walk the charred road out of Troy, your mind turns to the rhythm of it all. This isn't a single tidal wave, it's a series of crushing floods. You picture the Mediterranean like a vast game board, and the Sea Peoples as wild dice tossed again and again. Different names pop up in different places. Denyen, Lukka, Tieka, Peleset, Shekelesh. Were these tribes? Clans? Job titles? Maybe it was one big multi-ethnic cruise of chaos. One possible theory, the climate was changing. Crops were failing. Famine was spreading. Refugees turned to raiding. Raids turned into wars. Wars into migrations. And migrations into collapse. It's a spiral, and it spins fast. But theories are one thing. Standing in the rubble is another. You settle in a quiet spot near what was once a palace balcony. There's no roof anymore. Just stars. And the faint sound of waves, relentless and ancient, lapping the shore. The sea peoples are still out there somewhere, boarding their boats, sharpening their blades, heading to the next dot on the map. And guess what? You're sailing with them. The sea smells different when you're the invader. You're no longer watching the ships roll in, you're on one. The wooden planks beneath your feet groan like an old man doing squats. Salt crusts every surface. A smoky haze from the cook fire clings to the sails. Around you, 100 other strangers cradle their lives in bundles of cloth and wicker. Some wear armor. Others wear nothing but tunics and exhaustion. There are babies. And goats. And someone singing off-key in a language you don't understand. You are sailing into history with the sea peoples, and no one's offering a safety briefing. The boat isn't elegant. It's low in the water, crowded, patched with whatever wood wasn't already on fire somewhere back home. There are oars, but no rowers today. The wind is strong enough to carry your patchwork fleet toward another coastline ripe for testing. You squint toward the rising sun. You don't know where you'll land. But you're sure of one thing. Somewhere, someone is about to panic. You overhear snippets of foreign tongues, barking consonants, soft vowels, laughter that seems far too casual for people who just burned down a civilization or two. This isn't a single army. It's a collision of peoples. Some may be former allies. Others enemies turned neighbors. You wonder how they even coordinate. What's the chain of command? Is there a general? Or do they just vote on which city to sack after breakfast? Historians still debate whether the sea peoples were a united front or just a chaotic gaggle of desperate groups with nothing left to lose. Evidence leans toward the latter. The word sea peoples might be convenient shorthand, but it's a bit like calling everyone at a music festival the guitar guys. Too broad. Too messy. Too smoky. You lean over the side of the ship and stare at the waves. Beneath them lies the wreckage of trade routes that once connected the entire eastern Mediterranean. Merchant ships used to glide through these waters like lazy ducks. Now, those ships either flee or sink. There's no more tin from Afghanistan. No more copper from Cyprus. No more shiny bronze to be smelted into weapons and temple door hinges. That's the real trick of the sea peoples. They didn't just smash cities. They unplugged the network. Take Cyprus, for example, prime real estate for traders and raiders alike. You pass by it now, a burnt silhouette on the horizon. A few years ago, it was a bustling center of copper production. Now, its shores flicker with the last embers of organized industry. The once smooth rhythm of global trade has been replaced with the awkward lurch of chaos. You sit next to a man sharpening a blade. It's bronze, still useful, still sharp, but it won't last. Without tin, bronze is doomed. You ask, or mime, since your dialect is wildly incompatible, where he got it. He points behind him, then shrugs. A gift from a dying soldier? A looted trophy? A family heirloom now passed through theft? You don't ask again. You just watch the sparks fly from his whetstone. Above you, seagulls wheel and cry. Below, the sea whispers of old wrecks, of merchant vessels sunk without ceremony, cargo lost to the silt. Somewhere down there lies a shipment of purple dye that once cost more than gold. Now, it's fish food. Your boat bumps into another, and you catch sight of a painted eye on its prow. Not just decoration, some of these people believed the eye would help the ship see its way through dangerous waters. A bit of spiritual insurance. Considering how many of these raiders are also refugees, it makes sense they'd cling to any bit of magic left. One interesting detail catches your eye. A woman on a neighboring boat wears a necklace of what appear to be boar tusks, strung together with sinew. Not exactly Etzeretti, but intimidating. She sees you looking and grins, revealing a missing tooth. You look away. Fast. You arrive near the coast of Canaan, the land of ancient port cities, olive groves, and enough sun to make even the most seasoned warrior consider SPF. You're not alone. Dozens of ships are fanning out, like claws stretching toward a prize. Somewhere inland, scribes are scrambling to prepare defenses. But they won't be fast enough. You hit land with a jolt. The beach is empty. No trumpets, no resistance. Just the crunch of sand under your soles and the eerie creak of wood being dragged ashore. The sea peoples don't wait. Tents go up. Fires are lit. Some go inland to scout. Others dig trenches. It's not a raid anymore. It's a beachhead. You start to see a pattern. These people don't just attack. They settle. They stay. Some scholars believe the Pele-set, possibly part of the Sea Peoples, later became the Philistines. Yes, those Philistines. As in Goliath, slinger of doom, oversized helmet and all. The theory goes that they arrived, planted roots, and evolved from mysterious menace into regular Bronze to Iron Age society types, complete with pottery and grievances. You walk inland. Not far. Just enough to spot the edge of a nearby town. Mud brick houses. Livestock. Smoke rising, but not the destructive kind, yet. It's quiet. The kind of quiet that makes dogs whimper and birds go conveniently missing. Then a horn sounds. Short. Sharp. Not from your side. From the town. They see you. You see them. And history inches forward. You duck behind a boulder, heart racing like a Mycenaean courier with bad news. You don't know who fired first, but when the screaming starts, it's not subtle. Bronze clatters against wood. Someone yells in Hittite. Someone else yells in something that might be Proto-Italian. A chicken runs for its life and honestly, you're rooting for it. You don't fight. You just witness. Because that's your job tonight. Not to rewrite history, but to remember what it felt like when the sea peoples hit the shore. When worlds collided, not with great speeches and marble columns, but with ragged sails, stolen spears, and the terrible, electric silence before a city burns. You sneak back to the beach, past fighters and flame, and climb aboard the ship again. No one stops you. No one even notices. They're too busy building a new future from the ashes of your present. You wake to the steady thud of waves and the even less comforting thud of a drum, slow, deliberate, and far too ominous to be a casual party beat. You've been at sea for days now, but land looms ahead again. A new coast. A new victim. You don't know where you are, but from the color of the sand and the layout of the distant harbor, it looks like somewhere in the southern Levant. Maybe Ashkelon. Maybe Gaza. Maybe one of those other cities you vaguely remember from Sunday school. And guess what? It's about to have a very bad day. As the ship inches closer, you notice a change in the group. The sea peoples aren't just warriors, they are planners. Kind of. The armor's still mismatched, and some guys are still wearing their belts over their shoulders for reasons known only to them. But there's coordination here. A rhythm. A strategy. You realize this isn't their first landing. And it won't be their last. Some scholars believe the Sea Peoples conducted these attacks in waves, hit one city, regroup, hit another, pivot inland. Not just aimless violence, but coordinated disruption. Historians still debate whether these invasions were premeditated colonization or just the side effect of widespread collapse. Chicken, meat, egg. Egg, meat, flaming catapult. You step off the ship and onto dry land that's about to be wet with sweat, seawater, and probably tears. There's a kind of silence that hangs over the land, not peaceful, not sleepy, but that eerie you just walked into a surprise meeting kind of silence. You pass empty market stalls, baskets of figs left to rot, and a dropped sandal that looks like it belonged to someone who ran too fast to care about footwear. You're walking into a city court mid-breath. And then it exhales. The gates of the city creak open, slowly, warily. A delegation steps out. Hands raised. No weapons. Just wide eyes and shaky voices in a language that flutters on the wind like broken pottery. They are hoping, praying, probably, that this will be one of the times when negotiation works. Spoiler, it doesn't. The Sea Peoples aren't really known for their diplomatic grace. When you don't come from one stable homeland, you don't exactly have embassies. And you're starting to realize this isn't just conquest, this is survival. Some of these people may have been displaced themselves. Their homelands swallowed by famine, earthquake, or earlier invasions. This may be their only shot at a future, even if it comes at the cost of someone else's. So, the city falls. Again. You don't watch the whole thing, you've seen this movie before. Stone walls crumbling, smoke rising, warriors shouting in 20 different dialects. Somewhere, someone tries to make a last stand with a farming tool. Somewhere else, a child hides in a bread oven and hopes the gods are watching. One oddball fact you overhear mid-chaos: some of the Sea Peoples may have used carts with oxen to haul loot inland. Nothing like chasing gold with the horsepower of a very confused cow. Once the city is taken, a strange calm descends. Fires crackle, but there's no screaming now. The Sea Peoples move through the ruins like people unpacking in a new apartment. They stake out sections. Set up tents. You catch sight of one group sketching in the dirt, a layout, perhaps? A plan for rebuilding? You start to get a weird, unsettling thought. Are they planning to stay? Archaeological digs in places like Ashdod and Ekron suggest that after the initial wave of destruction, some Sea Peoples, again, possibly the Pele set, did exactly that. They didn't just torch the place and vanish. They settled. Built new homes. New temples. Even new kinds of pottery, blending styles from their homeland, wherever that was, with local materials. You wander through the smoking ruins and find one such pot, broad, with curving geometric patterns. You run your fingers along its still warm surface. It's not Mycenaean, not Canaanite. It's something new, something hybrid. History isn't just built with swords. It's built with casseroles. Later, you watch as a woman begins weaving a fishing net. No one told her to. No one passed her orders. But she's doing it anyway. Because after the burning, life creeps back in. The invaders become neighbors. The raiders become citizens. And eventually, the history books will forget which group she belonged to. At night, around a fire, a man tells a story to a circle of dirty, exhausted listeners. You can't understand every word, but the gestures speak volumes. Ships at sea, a storm, a lost home. The crowd nods. Someone wipes away a tear with the back of a calloused hand. This isn't entertainment, it's memory preservation. Oral history, passed down by those who never had the luxury of scribes or stone monuments. One historian even noted that in some regions, especially along the coast of the Levant, the sea people seem to have interrupted civilization more than destroyed it. Yes, they flattened cities. But they also kick-started change. Out of the chaos, new societies formed, ones that would shape the Iron Age to come. You recline on a bit of broken column, watching the stars blink through the smoke. Someone nearby is singing softly, a lullaby, maybe, in a tongue you don't recognize. You think about how languages change, how stories blend, how even destruction can plant seeds. You remember a quote, though you're not sure where you heard it, every ending is just the start of someone else's beginning. It feels true, and it feels unfair, but also weirdly comforting. As you drift toward sleep, one final thought crosses your mind. The Sea Peoples didn't just bring an end. They brought a transition. A messy, brutal, oddly human shift from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. From palaces to settlements. From centralized kingdoms to scattered city-states. They were, in many ways, history's reset button. You sigh. The sea glimmers in the moonlight. And somewhere behind you, a child is laughing. Maybe, just maybe, the world will rebuild. The next morning, the sun hits you like a judgmental spotlight. It pours over blackened rooftops and empty alleyways, and you sit up with your neck kinked from sleeping against a spear haft. Your back aches, your mouth tastes like seawater and campfire, and you vaguely recall dreaming of goats chasing you with scrolls. It's another day among the Sea Peoples, and the world is still very much ending. You wander through the remains of the port city. Whatever it was before is now a smudge on history's resume. A few residents, those who survived, are being herded out, or left behind, or quietly absorbed. The conquerors don't always kill everyone. Sometimes they just move in. Like awkward new roommates who don't knock and definitely drink the last of the milk. You come across a well, miraculously unscorched, and watch someone lower a bucket made of stitched leather. The Sea Peoples are nothing if not resourceful. They don't just destroy, they reuse. They build where it's easiest, loot where it's fastest, and adapt like professional chameleons. Historians still wonder where they learned this. Were they former allies of the empires they now upended? Mercenaries once paid in shiny bracelets, now rebelling with interest? Or were they forced into flexibility by the raw desperation of famine, drought, and the total collapse of everything they'd ever known? You pick through rubble and find the remnants of a storehouse. Burned jars. A crushed tablet. A cracked figurine of a goddess who looks like she's seen better centuries. You imagine what this place must have looked like a week ago, bustling, smug with prosperity. Now, it's a museum of ash. Still, signs of adaptation are everywhere. Children chase each other between broken columns. Someone's built a makeshift loom, stretched between two charred beams. The old city is becoming a new village, one basket of grain and one sheep at a time. Life, like mold and bad ideas, always finds a way. And now, it's time to move again. The Sea Peoples rarely stay in one place too long, at least, not in these early days. You join a smaller band as they pack up. There's a whispered rumor of a fertile region further inland, past where the Egyptians still hold sway. Maybe even a defensible hilltop. The word stronghold gets tossed around like it comes with complimentary olives. So you set off. Not on the sea this time, but by land. The path takes you through scorched fields, abandoned threshing floors, and the occasional corpse that no one's bothered to bury. The flies don't mind. You wrap your tunic tighter and keep walking. The group you're with isn't large, maybe 50 people. But they move like a unit. Weapons ready. Eyes sharp. At night, the camp is quiet. Too quiet. Everyone's listening for hoofbeats or worse, chariots. Egyptian patrols still roam these lands. And if they find you, there won't be negotiations. Just arrows. You overhear a man speaking of a previous encounter with Egyptian troops. According to him, the Sea Peoples once tried to push further south, maybe into the Nile Delta itself. And Egypt pushed back hard. Very hard. Like we still carved this victory on a temple wall hard. You tucked that nugget of trivia into your travel pouch. Did you know? The Egyptians claimed they defeated the Sea Peoples in a massive naval battle, where the invaders were trapped in a river mouth and annihilated. But historians can't agree on whether this was exaggerated propaganda or a rare moment where Egypt actually managed to hold the line. Either way, it's a reminder, this continent is still full of players. Big ones. Old ones. And they're not giving up without a blood-splattered fight. You reach a small settlement nestled near a spring. Not much more than a few huts and a granary. The locals eye you warily. Some flee. Others grab farming tools like they might actually help. But the leader of your group steps forward, not with a weapon, but with a loaf of bread. An offering. A signal. Surprisingly, it works. The village isn't razed. Not today. Instead, there's a tense truce. Barter. Maybe even a bit of mutual curiosity. One woman gives your group honey in exchange for a hunk of bronze. Another trades cloth for a goat. It's not trust. It's survival math. Historians agree this kind of integration may have been common. Sea Peoples didn't always destroy. Sometimes they blended. Merged. Introduced foreign customs, new tools, better fishing nets. In some areas, they likely became part of the social fabric, one awkward thread at a time. You spend the night in a barn, the smell of hay and sheep filling your nose like a rustic air freshener. The stars overhead look the same as they did last week, bright, distant, and totally indifferent to your nonsense. You think about the people left behind. The cities still burning. The temples looted. The kings clutching their gold while their guards mutter about desertions. And you wonder, what if this isn't just a chapter? What if this is the end of the book? Because here's the thing, no one seems to be rebuilding. Not really. You haven't seen a palace under construction. Haven't met a single tax collector. No one's sketching out a 10-year infrastructure plan. It's all patchwork. Duct tape history. It's starting to feel like civilization itself is on a sabbatical. You walk outside and spot an old man teaching two children how to chip flint. Not sharpen bronze. Chip flint. You blink. That's Stone Age tech. Literally. You realize something chilling. When the supply chains broke, when the tin stopped flowing, people didn't just lose luxury, they lost the recipe for progress. You look down at your own blade. Bronze. Beautiful. And slowly becoming obsolete. This is the Bronze Age collapsing in real time, and you're watching people downgrade. You remember the stories from your own time, about the fall of Rome, the Black Plague, even the internet going down for 5 minutes. But this? This is bigger. It's not just a kingdom falling. It's a whole way of life coming apart, thread by golden thread. You sit back, sigh, and let the dust settle around you. Tomorrow, you'll march again. Tonight, you just listen to the wind. It sounds a lot like change. You don't know what wakes you first, the smell of something burning or the unmistakable twang of a bowstring. Either way, you're upright in an instant, clutching your blanket like it might protect you from arrows. Spoiler, it won't. Turns out, that peaceful little village? Not everyone in it was thrilled to play host to roving sea-based conquerors. Sometime after midnight, a few residents decided to reclaim their homes, with fire, blades, and the kind of yelling that carries over valleys. Your group scrambles to form a defense, and for a brief, bewildering moment, you're standing on a grain bin wondering if this is how your travel story ends. Welcome to the awkward and often temporary world of Sea People's settlement. The Sea Peoples aren't invincible. Far from it. Their success often relies on shock, momentum, and sheer desperation. But when locals fight back, or when terrain favors defense, these wandering warriors can and do get pushed out. Historians still debate whether the Sea Peoples truly settled in large numbers, or if they were more like relentless nomads, testing, pressing, sometimes staying, sometimes vanishing into the hills like coastal ghosts. You survive the skirmish, barely. Your group flees into the dawn, leaving behind smoldering roofs and some unfortunate supplies, including the last goat. You try not to think about the honey you traded for it. That was some top-tier honey. The retreat takes you north, into drier lands. Hills rise, scrubby and sun-scorched. Birds wheel overhead. It's not glamorous, but it's safer. And from this vantage point, you can see the shattered bones of what once were cities, stone rings, half-buried columns, the ancient punctuation marks of collapse. You pass through one of these ruined towns around mid-morning. It has no name you recognize, but from the weathered stones and long-dead olive trees, it was once impressive. Now it's been looted, probably more than once, and grass grows where markets once buzzed. The ghosts here don't whisper, they just stare. An older Sea People's warrior beside you mutters a name, Garrett. You blink. That's familiar. A major trading hub on the Levantine coast. Or, it was. Historians agree Garrett met its end sometime around 1180 BC. The city was torched, the royal archives sealed under rubble. And here's the kicker. It may have happened so fast that one of the last letters found there was a desperate plea for help. Too late. The city's calls went unanswered. You pick through some charred debris and uncover something strange, a clay tablet, baked hard by fire. It's in cuneiform, thousands of tiny wedge-shaped marks. You can't read it, obviously, but you feel the gravity of it. Maybe it was an invoice, a marriage contract, or the final scribbled hopes of a scribe who'd seen the writing on the proverbial, and very literal, wall. You remember reading somewhere that Garrett had over 1,000 cuneiform tablets in its archives. Trade records, diplomatic letters, spells, everything. But once the city fell, those voices were silenced. It's like someone kicked the power cord out of an entire civilization. And you're starting to notice a pattern. The Sea Peoples didn't just loot, they broke connections. Trade routes? Gone. Supply chains? Slashed. Diplomatic alliances built over centuries? Obliterated in one sailing season. Empires are fragile. Turns out all it takes is some coordinated chaos and a few guys in horned helmets to unravel the whole geopolitical sweater. Oh, and about those helmets, here's a fun fact. Some depictions of the Sea Peoples show them wearing what look like feathered crowns or bizarre spiked headbands. Historians can't agree if it was ceremonial gear, regional fashion, or just very poor helmet design. Either way, it's not exactly intimidating when a gust of wind makes you look like a startled bird. Your group continues inland, hugging the edges of known territory. You trade again, sometimes peacefully, sometimes under threat. You sleep under stars, in caves, once even in an abandoned chariot wheelhouse. The nights grow colder, the terrain more rugged. And the people you meet? less trusting by the day. One night, huddled near a smoky fire, a younger woman in your group whispers a question, "When does it end?" No one answers. Because no one knows. Historians still wonder whether the sea people saw themselves as destroyers or simply survivors. Did they mean to tear down the Bronze Age, or were they just trying to outlive it? The evidence suggests both. Some raids were brutal and clearly meant to dismantle power structures. Others feel more like desperate migrations. The line between invader and refugee blurs. You dream that night of a harbor city rebuilt. New walls. New languages. Children playing in streets paved with repurposed temple stone. And above it all, a banner that shows not one kingdom, but many, merged by fire, shaped by need. Then you wake up with a beetle in your ear. History has no chill. By now, your group is nearly unrecognizable. Some have left. Others joined. Weapons are dulled, clothes mended with whatever fabric could be scrounged. But the eyes? Still sharp. Still scanning the horizon for threats or opportunities. You descend into a fertile valley, low and green like something from a storybook. There's a river curling through it. Palm trees. Wild grain. And, miracle of miracles, an intact village that hasn't bolted its doors. The leader raises his hand. No weapons. Just a gesture of peace. Again. And somehow, again, it works. This time, there's even laughter. You see a sea people's child toss a ball to a local boy. Someone tries to trade a seashell necklace for dried dates. It's not perfect, but it's possible. You sit on a flat stone, watching the mingling, listening to the river. And you realize, these aren't just destroyers. They're carriers of change. Like dandelion seeds blown across a dying world. From these scattered moments, something new might grow. And if not, well, you'll keep walking. Because that's what sea peoples do. You wake to birdsong. Not war horns. Not screaming. Not the thump of hooves or the crackle of fire. Just birdsong. Gentle, repetitive, entirely indifferent to the world's chaos. You open your eyes slowly, wondering if you're dreaming. But no, the sun is real, warm on your face. The river still hums nearby. The sea peoples are, miraculously, at peace. At least, for now. You stretch, bones popping like overused kindling, and sit up to a breakfast of coarse bread and something that might be cheese, though its identity is still under investigation. Around you, the temporary camp has shifted again, less nomadic raiding party, more post-apocalyptic block party. Someone's built a smokehouse. A few children are chasing each other through drying laundry. One man is even carving something that might eventually resemble a chair. It's odd to think this far inland is still part of the sea people's story. But historians agree, they didn't just ravage coastlines. They moved like a tide through the lands of Canaan, inland Syria, even into Anatolia. This wasn't just some seasonal Viking cruise. It was a migration with an attitude. You overhear one of the older warriors grumbling about the Hittites, how they used to control these lands, how their power reached across mountains and rivers. Not anymore. By now, in the early 12th century BC, the Hittite Empire has already collapsed like a badly built tent. The capital, Hattusa, lies abandoned. Even the records stop. No letters, no tax logs, just silence. You wander a little and find a spot under a fig tree. The fruit is shriveled, but still edible. You chew slowly, eyes scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, more groups like yours are moving. Some are raiders. Some are settlers. Some are probably just very lost. By the way, archaeologists have found Egyptian records listing sea peoples by tribal names, like the Shi'adin, the Shekelesh, the Lukka, and the Peleset. Sounds like a fantasy football league, but each of those might represent a different group, origin, or even occupation. The Peleset, for example, are widely believed to be the same people who later become the Philistines. You blink at that. The Philistines? As in those Philistines? The ones who'd eventually square off with early Israelites, have some run-ins with Samson, and lose a famous helmet to a rock-hurling shepherd boy? That's them. It's a strange thought, that the villains of one story might be the misunderstood migrants of another. You spend the afternoon helping reinforce one of the huts with packed mud. It's messy work, but it beats looting. A local woman shows you how to align reeds for structure. You try not to step on her chickens. She doesn't smile much, but she gives you water, and that's its own kind of trust. Historians still debate whether sea peoples integrated into local cultures gradually or through force. The truth is probably a bit of both. Sometimes violence gave way to compromise. Other times, compromise was just a pause between raids. Either way, these weren't one-dimensional barbarians. They learned, adapted, and occasionally, even accidentally, helped lay the foundations of new societies. You walk through the settlement at dusk. Fires crackle. A man plays a reed flute that only has 2 notes, and somehow still manages to hit the wrong one. A group of women sing while grinding grain. You notice how their accents mix, some words native, others borrowed from far-off coasts. Cultures fusing under stress, like clay melting in a kiln. That night, there's a feast. Not a royal banquet, but close enough for people who were dodging arrows a week ago. Roasted fowl, lentil mash, flatbread so tough it could double as a shield. You sit with a group of younger warriors, laughing at some story about a goat that chased a priest into a well. You're not sure it's true, but honestly, at this point, nothing would surprise you. A storyteller begins to speak. No scrolls, just memory. She recounts the journey from a far island, possibly Sardinia, where drought left their fields cracked and dead. She speaks of brothers lost at sea, of trading silver for ship planks, of landing on shores that spat them back. Her voice is hoarse, but the crowd listens like it's gospel. And then she says something strange. "We are not the storm," she says. "We are what's left behind when the storm passes." You sit with that for a while. Because here's the truth that no one carved into stone. The sea peoples didn't just end the Bronze Age. They survived it. They outlasted collapsing empires, failing crops, and kings who thought their palaces would last forever. And in doing so, they became the messy glue holding together the tatters of a broken age. Later that night, you climb a hill just beyond the village. The moon is full, silvering the fields. Below you, the settlement glows with soft torchlight. No war drums. No screams. Just crickets and the whisper of wind through olive branches. You think about the things you've seen. Temples looted, cities burned, languages lost, gods abandoned. And yet, people still plant grain. Still fall in love. Still make jokes about goats. Historians can't agree on where the sea peoples came from. But the more you travel with them, the more you realize they came from everywhere. Islands, mountains, failed kingdoms, flooded coasts. They were less a single people and more a movement, a reaction, a survival instinct. And wherever they went, they carried pieces of the old world and the blueprints of a new one. You lie back on the grass, staring at the stars. It's strange. You came expecting to witness destruction. But here, under this sky, it feels more like rebirth. The sky turns bruised lavender as dawn breaks, and your breath rises in thin wisps. Someone snores nearby, probably the guy who tried to roast barley over a dung fire last night. You step away from the still sleeping camp, careful not to wake the chickens. Yes, somehow, against all odds, chickens are now a staple of your sea people's journey. Today, you head west. Word has spread, another city near the coast has fallen. Not just raided, but flattened. Its name? Ashkelon. The old Canaanite stronghold is little more than charred walls and scattered sandals. You pack what little you have left and follow your group along dusty animal trails. Your feet know the rhythm now. Trudge, pause, squint at the horizon. Repeat. The path takes you through rolling hills and vineyards gone wild. You pass terraces carved by people who thought the land would feed their great-grandchildren. Instead, their stone walls crumble, and the vines tangle over them like ivy reclaiming a broken kingdom. You're starting to see it everywhere, that eerie stillness after collapse. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's the kind of silence that settles in after people stop trying. One of the warriors beside you, a woman with arms like carved cedar, gestures toward the coast. Peleset land, she mutters. You recognize the word, Peleset. Egyptian records list them among the sea peoples, and many historians believe they're the ones who settled here and became the Philistines. Yeah, those Philistines. Sling rocks, temples, and all. You arrive at the remains of Ashkelon by midday. The walls are scorched. Doors hang crooked. You step carefully, because under the dust and ruin, there are layers, old Canaanite structures, newer Philistine additions. It's like history stacked itself here, took a breath, and then forgot how to keep going. You help your group scavenge. There's no glory in it, just broken pottery, cracked altars, and a dented bronze bowl someone insists is sacred. You suspect it's actually a fancy chamber pot, but now is not the time for archaeology snobbery. Still, you can't help wondering how it all unraveled. These cities were once fortified, rich, sophisticated, but by now, around 1170 BC, they're dropping like dominoes. It's not just the sea peoples, of course. Famine, drought, internal rebellion, these things stir in the background like shadows in torchlight. And here's something you didn't expect to think about. The sea peoples may have accidentally created power vacuums where none existed before. Imagine this, a mighty kingdom falls, its central government gone, cities in ruin. What fills the gap? Local warlords? Displaced migrants? Or perhaps a ragtag group of seafaring opportunists who learned to build houses just as well as they raised them? That afternoon, you watch your group repair a section of Ashkelon's outer wall, not to protect it, but to use it as shelter. Broken cities make decent homes if you're not picky. And you're not. Not anymore. Someone finds an old lyre in a smashed temple. One string remains. Still, a kid plucks it like it holds the voice of a god. Everyone gathers, half laughing, half humming to a tune that's probably improvised and slightly off-key. The notes drift into the wind. And for a moment, it sounds like something new is being born from the ashes. Historians still argue whether the sea peoples introduced innovation or simply interrupted it. After all, the collapse of the Bronze Age wasn't just political, it was also technological. Trade routes vanished. Tin, crucial for making bronze, became hard to find. This forced entire cultures to adapt or disappear. Iron tools slowly began to replace bronze. Not because people wanted to upgrade, but because they had no other choice. You watch a man sharpen a crude iron blade against a sandstone block. It's ugly, uneven, but it works. Iron isn't just a new metal, It's a metaphor. Ugly. Harder. But here to stay. That night, fires flicker across the ruined city like fireflies. You sit beside one, eating roasted onions and whatever passed for lentils today. Someone shares a tale of a great battle near the Nile, Egypt versus the Sea Peoples. That's the one from Pharaoh Ramses III's mortuary temple, Medinet Habu. You've heard of it. The murals depict Sea Peoples' ships clashing with Egyptian vessels, their crews locked in hand-to-hand combat. The Egyptians won, or at least claimed to. But they had to fight like their gods depended on it. And here's a question historians still toss around like a game of hot rocks. If Ramses III defeated the Sea Peoples so decisively around 1175 BC, why did Egypt still collapse within a few generations? Victory is a slippery thing. You lean back, watching smoke spiral into the stars. Maybe the Sea Peoples weren't trying to win. Maybe they were just trying to survive. Maybe they were less conquerors and more catalysts. Like wind knocking over an already teetering stack of amphorae. In the morning, there will be more decisions. Stay here? Move inland? Seek alliance with local tribes? Or sail again? But for now, as laughter rises and the stars blink gently overhead, you realize something. There's a strange comfort in this uncertain world. The rules have changed. But people still sing. They still make bad jokes about onions. And in the spaces between empires, new stories are beginning. The wind shifts. It carries salt now, thick, sharp, and unmistakably oceanic. You lift your head and squint toward the west. The sea is out there, beyond the ridge, glimmering like a sheet of melted silver under the midday sun. And something inside you stirs. Maybe it's homesickness. Maybe it's curiosity. Or maybe you're just tired of sleeping near half-collapsed walls and listening to men snore like water buffalo with head colds. So you walk. Others join. Not a formal expedition, just a ragged line of wanderers who remember what it's like to chase the horizon. You hike past thorny scrublands, along dusty animal tracks, through olive groves that still cling stubbornly to their fruit. Birds circle overhead like they're waiting for you to drop. You don't. By mid-afternoon, you reach the coast. And there it is. The Mediterranean. Not a myth. Not a story. But the real, shimmering expanse of blue. You smell it before you see it. The brine, the fishy undertone, the memory of seaweed in your teeth. You inhale deeply, like you're trying to breathe in a memory. And then you see them. Ships. Not yours. Anchored just off the coast is a fleet of low-slung Egyptian warships, their prows carved with serpent heads, their sails furled in the lazy breeze. On the beach, soldiers patrol with methodical boredom. Shields slung across backs, bronze swords at their hips, eyes sunburnt and scanning. Well, this just got awkward. You crouch behind a dune with your group. No one speaks. Everyone watches. Historians agree, Egypt had had enough of the Sea Peoples by this point. Pharaoh Ramses III, in particular, wasn't exactly rolling out the welcome mat. After previous clashes on land, he braced for a major invasion from the sea around 1175 BC. He didn't wait. He prepared. Fortified the Nile Delta. Studied enemy tactics. Then lured the Sea Peoples into a trap. And now you're seeing the aftermath. These Egyptians aren't running. They're waiting. You pull back and huddle under a thicket of thorny brush. The group debates, quietly but intensely. Do you risk contact? Approach in peace? Pretend to be fishermen? Everyone remembers what happened to the last group that tried that. Spoiler, they didn't come back with fish. Night falls. The sea turns dark, like ink. The ships remain unmoving sentinels. Fires flicker on board. From a distance, they look like tiny floating cities. You doze in shifts. Someone hands out dried dates. You chew quietly, thinking. Here's a question. If Egypt survived the Bronze Age collapse, does that make them the heroes of this story? Or just the last one standing? Because Egypt didn't escape unscathed. After Ramses III's victory over the Sea Peoples, the empire weakened. Trade routes shriveled. Temples were looted. Tomb builders went on strike. That's right, strikes. Papyrus scrolls show laborers protesting late wages, even looting royal tombs in desperation. Not exactly Golden Age behavior. You hear a commotion near the dunes. A scout has returned. He's seen something inland, another group of sea peoples. But this one's different. Better organized. Armed with carts, livestock, even, strangely, a priest in tow. Could they be the Shi'an? You've heard of them. Rumored to be among the more disciplined of the sea peoples. Egyptian records even show some Shi'an working as mercenaries for the pharaohs after earlier conflicts. Yes, you heard that right. Some sea peoples ended up protecting the empire they once tried to raid. History has a sense of humor. You decide to investigate. By dawn, you and a few companions approach a grove near a freshwater spring. Sure enough, a small encampment rests there, orderly, neat, with actual tents instead of the usual stack some reeds and hope strategy. Their leader is a tall man with a shaved head and a golden earring shaped like a ram. He looks you over and gestures for you to approach. He offers water. Then, surprisingly, wine. This is the sea people's equivalent of a warm handshake. You trade stories. Your group speaks of burned cities and Egyptian patrols. He nods grimly. His group has been traveling from the north, possibly from Cyprus or even Mycenaean territory, sailing when they can, walking when they must. And here's the kicker, they're not here to conquer. They're looking for land. For treaties. For some kind of deal. You sit around their fire, listening. Their priest, dressed in white linen stained with clay, recites a tale of a star that fell from the sky and turned crops to ash. Sounds dramatic. Probably symbolic. Or maybe they just really dislike weather patterns. Historians still wonder whether the sea peoples were united by a central plan, or simply converging chaos. What's clear is that they operated in waves. Some came to destroy. Others to settle. Some possibly had no idea where they were even going. You share a moment with one of their scribes. Yes, a scribe. He shows you a clay tablet etched with unfamiliar symbols. It's not Linear B. Not Egyptian. Something else entirely. You trace the grooves with your finger, realizing you're touching a language that might never be deciphered. The stars brighten overhead. You lie back on a mat of woven reeds and stare upward. One of your companions, half asleep, half inspired, asks, "Do you think anyone will remember us?" Someone laughs softly. "Only if they find our bones in the right dirt." You smile. Because honestly, that's not far off. The sea peoples didn't leave many written records. Most of what we know comes from the people who survived them, Egyptians, Hittites, scribes of fading cities who had just enough ink left to say, "We were attacked." It's like trying to understand a hurricane by reading complaints carved into tree trunks. Still, their impact is undeniable. Cities crumbled. Trade collapsed. The Bronze Age ended, and the world began reshaping itself. And here you are, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, sipping bitter wine beside former enemies, under stars that have no idea who owns what. The sea sighs nearby. The Egyptian ships are still anchored. But tomorrow? Maybe they'll be gone. Maybe you'll sail again. Or maybe you'll stay and help this new group build something worth keeping. The wind is warm and lazy this morning, tugging playfully at your tunic as if it knows something you don't. You rub sleep from your eyes and peer toward the shore. The Egyptian ships? Gone. Just gone. No battle. No horns. No storm. Like they were never there at all. Your group whispers theories, none of them particularly helpful. Maybe they sailed for home. Maybe they are hiding behind a peninsula. Maybe they got bored. Whatever the reason, you're grateful. Because now, for the first time in weeks, you feel something unfamiliar creeping in. A sense of possibility. The Shiaden group, the one with the clean tents and an actual plan, has invited you to stay. It's a tempting offer. Not least because they have bread. Leavened bread. After months of eating barley like it's a punishment, you would probably sign a treaty with a crocodile for a slice of something that doesn't taste like damp roof tiles. So you agree. You help them scout nearby land for settlement. The soil's not bad, loamy, soft, promising. There's a stream close enough to be useful, but not so close that it floods every time someone sneezes upstream. The local flora isn't trying to kill you, always a bonus, and the only wild animals you see are more interested in sniffing you than eating you. Soon, you're digging trenches, planting seeds, lashing reeds into storage bins. It's the least sea people's thing you've done all year. And yet, it feels good. You trade bronze pins for sheep. Help repair fishing nets. Share fermented fig paste with a guy who insists it cures everything from back pain to heartbreak. Spoiler, it does not. This, historians believe, may be the secret second life of the sea peoples. Not raiders, not destroyers, but settlers, immigrants, farmers. You're living proof. Along the southern coast of Canaan, modern-day Israel and Gaza, evidence shows that groups like the Peleset, possibly the Philistines, the Tcheka, and others began building permanent communities after the Bronze Age collapse. Pottery styles change. Architecture evolves. You start seeing local techniques blending with Aegean elements, Mycenaean-style halves, Cypriot ceramics, Canaanite tools. It's cultural fusion, long before that was a trendy food truck theme. One night, you help paint a mural on the side of a clay granary. Nothing fancy, just spirals, waves, and strange sea creatures. Someone jokes that future generations will think it's religious. Someone else says, maybe it is. You shrug. All you know is it looks good. As weeks pass, a small village takes shape. There's a market area, loosely defined by colorful cloth tied between stakes. A communal oven where everyone argues about whose flatbread is burning. A fire pit circle where you swap stories in the evenings, beneath a carved totem that nobody can quite agree on the meaning of. One scholar, well, an old woman who used to read omens in goat intestines, says this land was fated to be yours. You don't know about fate, but it certainly beats starving in the wilderness or getting speared by an overly enthusiastic Egyptian guard. And yet, news still travels. You hear of more cities falling inland, Megiddo, Hazor. Names whispered like the last breath of a dying elder. The dominoes haven't stopped toppling. The chaos hasn't fully burned out. But your little coastal settlement? It's growing. You begin to see a pattern. The same sea peoples who once leapt off ships with bronze axes and bad tempers are now herding goats and haggling over melon prices. Even among your own group, People have started picking up local phrases, wearing native jewelry, adopting customs they once found strange. Historians can't agree whether this shift happened out of strategy or necessity. Did the Sea Peoples plan to integrate? Or did they simply realize they weren't going to win the old way, and tried something new? You suspect it's a bit of both. After all, you've always been more adaptable than people gave you credit for. One evening, you sit beside a local artisan, an older man with gnarled fingers and the suspicious squint of someone who's been cheated one too many times at market. He's teaching you to carve handles for sickles. Balance is everything, he says, nudging your elbow. You tip the blade, you slice your foot. You tip your foot, you become a joke. Fair enough. Later, over dried figs and goat cheese, he tells you that his grandfather died defending a city from your people. You tense up. Then he shrugs. Now you're planting beside me. Life's funny. You don't laugh exactly, but something inside you loosens. And then, a moment both awkward and oddly touching, he offers to carve your name into a tablet, so you can be remembered. You stammer something about not being important. He rolls his eyes. No one's important. That's why we write names down. You sit silently as he begins. Chisel. Tap. Dust. You realize this is how history survives, not through kings and conquerors, but through quiet moments like this. Through a name on a stone. A painted fish on a wall. A dented brooch buried beneath a child's hut. It's possible your name will vanish. Your people might be remembered only as faceless invaders. Or footnotes. Or villains. But tonight, in this small village lit by flickering oil lamps, you feel something like peace. And that's more than most ever get. You lie down under woven blankets, the stars stretched above you like a silent choir. Somewhere, a dog barks. Someone drops a clay bowl. A baby cries, then settles. The world, still cracked, is slowly healing. One seed, one wall, one whispered story at a time. Morning again. The kind of slow, amber morning where even the flies seem drowsy. You wake up to the sound of a rooster that definitely thinks it's more important than it is. You toss a stone in its general direction, not to hit it, just to express your opinion. It crows louder in defiance. Typical. The village is stirring. Someone's already started the fire in the communal oven, and the smell of toasting grain wafts through the air like a warm memory. You stretch, rub your back, and realize your body's begun to ache in a different way now, not from marching or fighting, but from work. Honest work. Which is weirdly more exhausting, somehow. There's a new rhythm to life here, but even in this fragile piece, tension brews beneath the surface. You feel it in the sideways glances between newer arrivals and the older settlers. In the way tools go missing, then mysteriously return. In the way the children, once loud and wild, are suddenly quieter, listening. Because even as your small settlement flourishes, the outside world continues to unravel. A traveling merchant arrives just before midday, his donkey half dead and his tunic streaked with road dust. He speaks fast, like he's trying to outrun his own words. Ugarit has fallen, he says. A port city that once bustled with wealth and diplomacy, gone. Burned to its foundations. No warning. No mercy. People just vanished. Ugarit, the jewel of the northern Levant. The place where scribes once wrote on tablets in cuneiform and kings corresponded with pharaohs using the ancient world's equivalent of fancy emails. That place? Flattened. And here's the kicker. Before it fell, the king of Ugarit reportedly sent out a desperate letter to Egypt pleading for help, saying enemy ships were already in sight. That letter? Found later, still clay-soft, baked into history by the fires that followed. It was never delivered in time. You sit with the merchant that evening, trading food for stories. He says other cities are fortifying their walls, but it's probably too late. The sea peoples, he mutters darkly, gesturing at your group like you're ghosts. You start to protest, then stop. Because he's not wrong. Even now, others like you continue to move across the region. Not everyone is planting crops and baking bread. Some groups still burn what they can't steal, take what they can't trade. Not out of cruelty. Just desperation. When you've lost everything, the rules start to bend. And then there's the Philistines, yes, those Philistines. The ones who may be your distant cousins by way of warships and bad manners. They're carving out a foothold farther down the coast. Cities like Ashkelon, Gaza, and Ekron are becoming strongholds. Fortified, advanced, and, strangely, sophisticated. Historians still debate whether the Philistines were originally part of the Sea Peoples or just heavily influenced by them. But their material culture? Definitely different. They use Mycenaean-style pottery, raise pigs, a real party fowl in nearby regions, and worship unfamiliar gods, at least one of whom seems to have a thing for golden hemorrhoids. Yes, golden hemorrhoids. The story is in the scrolls, ask any sleepless scribe. You decide to see it for yourself. By late autumn, you set out southward with a few companions. The journey is rough, but the land is forgiving. Hills roll gently toward the coast, dotted with fig trees and thickets of dry grass. You pass abandoned watchtowers, small villages with strange dialects, and the occasional shrine to gods you don't recognize but politely nod at anyway. And then, Ashdod. It's impressive. Built on a hill, the city rises like a promise. Stone walls, not just mud brick. A bustling market filled with sounds and smells you'd forgotten, honeyed nuts, roasted lamb, spices strong enough to make your eyes water and your stomach growl. You blend in well enough. Wear the right kind of headcloth, keep your weapon sheathed, nod like you belong. Inside, you see something unexpected, order. People walking with purpose. Guards who don't look bored. Storage rooms packed with grain. An actual governing council. These aren't random raiders. These are settlers with a plan. You find an old man near the temple. His beard is braided with silver thread, and he carries himself like someone used to being listened to. He tells you this city, like others in the region, was reborn from the ashes of conquest. They didn't just occupy, it was more like a restart. From chaos, structure. From loss, legacy. He invites you to a ceremony that evening, some kind of harvest festival. You go, mostly for the food. There's music, drums and reed flutes, unlike anything you've heard before. Women dance with painted palms and bright scarves, twirling like windblown petals. Children wear masks carved from gourds and throw dyed sand into the air. You eat until your stomach protests. You drink something sour that makes your ears warm. And for a few hours, the world feels whole. But the old man pulls you aside before the night ends. There's peace now, he says, voice low. But memory is long. And the others, they remember. The Egyptians. The Canaanites. The Hebrews. They won't forget what we did. You nod slowly. Because neither will you. That's the quiet cost of survival. You carry it with you. Not just in scars or half-remembered screams, but in every cautious glance. Every too quiet silence. Every time someone says sea peoples like it's a curse. And yet, here you are. Planting roots. Building homes. Writing your own history, even if no one ever reads it. You return to your original settlement a week later. Things have changed. New families arrived. A well's been dug. Someone built a crude sundial and insists it's mostly accurate. Life moves on. And so do you. But now you know, somewhere along the Mediterranean coast, the legacy of the Sea Peoples is taking on a new shape. Not just in burned scrolls and battle accounts, but in thriving villages, stubborn traditions, and a future built plank by plank, seed by seed. You rest that night with a full belly, under a roof you helped raise, on land you helped reclaim. And for once, your dreams are quiet. You are tracing a furrow in the dirt with your toe, bored, maybe, or thoughtful. The sun is halfway down the sky, bleeding amber over the low-slung rooftops of your settlement. The days are shorter now, and the air carries that edge you only notice when the wind shifts, cooler, drier, almost watchful. It's been years since the chaos. You've aged into something else entirely. Not a warrior. Not a wanderer. Something softer. Maybe wiser. Maybe just better at hiding your exhaustion. But one thing hasn't changed. The world is still piecing itself together. Not all of it. Some parts are simply gone. Cities that were once the pride of the Bronze Age are now broken teeth in the landscape. Hattusa, capital of the mighty Hittite Empire, fell sometime around 1200 BC. No one's sure exactly when, or who struck the final blow. Could have been internal revolt. Could have been your old neighbors with spears and very loud opinions. Could have been both. Historians still debate what tipped the balance in Anatolia. There are theories: climate shifts, famine, invading forces, political collapse, even disease. Some suggest the Sea Peoples helped finish what was already crumbling. You remember Anatolia. Remember marching those high passes, dodging falling rocks and freezing rain, and some goat that absolutely hated you. And now? The Hittite archives, those clay records of laws, treaties, inventory lists for an empire that once rivaled Egypt, are buried under rubble. Their gods are quiet. Their palaces? Haunted by ivy and wind. But where something ends, something else inevitably grows. You hear rumors from the east. A small people with curious customs, Hebrews, are spreading stories of a single God and a land of promise. They live simply, yet fiercely. Their tales of exodus and conquest carry weight, whether you believe them or not. You trade with them occasionally. They are wary of outsiders, but they make good cheese. Surprisingly good cheese. To the west, the Greeks, what's left of them, are also finding their footing. The Mycenaeans? They've mostly vanished. Their citadels, Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, either looted or deserted. Even their writing system, Linear B, disappears. It's like someone hit the reset button. And yet, on rocky coastlines and scattered islands, something stirs. New kinds of pottery. New kinds of poetry. The seeds of the classical world, still a few centuries from sprouting, but already present if you know where to look. You wouldn't call it a renaissance. Not yet. It's more like the slow inhale before someone speaks after a long, awkward silence. Meanwhile, Egypt limps forward. After your people were repelled at the Battle of the Delta, probably the last great moment of the Egyptian New Kingdom, the pharaohs retreated behind their walls. Ramses III held the line, yes. But it cost him. The treasury bled. The people murmured. His successors were weaker, less divine, more assassinate-able. And don't get started on the priests. They grew stronger than the kings, hoarding grain and gold, turning temples into miniature kingdoms. It's hard to rule when even your gods are unionizing. Your contacts tell you the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings were looted, sometimes by the very men who buried the mummies. A sad irony, considering how obsessed these people are with eternal life. But maybe you understand. Desperation makes philosophers of everyone. Closer to home, something else is happening, something subtle. You begin to hear whispers of a word, Philistia. It's not just a people anymore, it's a place. A real region, with cities, rulers, taxes, and temples. You even hear rumors of 5 allied city-states forming a pentapolis: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gath, and Ekron. Each ruled by a Seren, a sort of warlord chieftain hybrid who answers to no one but the gods and maybe his own extremely loud mother. You smile at that. Sounds about right. The Philistines are becoming more than just a memory of war. They're becoming part of the land. Integrated. Feared, yes, but also respected. Their pottery, now nicknamed Philistine bichrome, features both foreign and local designs. Their architecture blends Egyptian influence with Aegean touches. Their language shifts, twisting into something new. Something local. You walk through a town square and see children learning both their parents' tongue and the native dialect. A girl hands you a carved shell shaped like a sun. She doesn't know what it used to mean to be a sea person. She only knows she likes shiny things and warm bread. Honestly, you admire her priorities. That night, a storm rolls in. Low thunder, quick rain, wind sharp enough to make doors rattle and cloaks flap like sails. You lie awake listening to it, letting it churn through you. Because beneath your contentment, a question lingers. What will people remember? Will they speak of the sea peoples as villains? Barbarians? Bringers of doom? Or will they see what came after, the rebuilding, the merging, the fragile, persistent renewal, and recognize it for what it was? Historians can't quite decide. They love a mystery, and the sea peoples are one of their favorites. No written records left behind. No empire. Just traces, burned cities, foreign weapons, disrupted economies, strange pottery styles. And yet, here you are. A person with a name, a family, a history that refuses to vanish quietly into the dirt. You rise at dawn, after the storm. The village is still here. Children are chasing goats again. Someone's fixing a roof. Someone else is complaining about grain rations. It's imperfect, but it's yours. You stand at the edge of your fields and watch the sun rise. Same sun as always. But now it feels like it sees you, not as a shadow creeping from the sea, but as part of the landscape. A thread in the tapestry. The sea peoples came from everywhere. They wrecked things. They settled things. They left traces. They became part of something new. So did you. And if the scrolls don't mention your name, if the kings forget your deeds, if the bards sing of others, so what? You lived. You adapted. You endured. And sometimes, that's the real victory. You're not sure when it started, this feeling that history itself is watching you. Maybe it's in the way the olive trees sway like old storytellers, or how the stones underfoot seem worn down by footsteps far older than yours. Or maybe it's just that now, after all these years, you're no longer running. You have time to look around, to listen, to notice that the world has changed and somehow, incredibly, you helped it happen. The Bronze Age is gone. You don't need a scribe to tell you that. You can see it, feel it. The trade routes that once pulsed across the Mediterranean like lifelines are mostly dry now. Those giant palatial complexes, the nerve centers of the ancient world, they're dust, or worse, tourist hazards waiting to be excavated. You used to barter goods wrapped in Egyptian linen or Mycenaean seal-stamped jars. Now you're trading sheep for beer and calling it a good day. And yet, in the collapse, something else took root, something strange and quiet and kind of wonderful. You could call it resilience. Or just stubbornness. Honestly, both fit. Take your own settlement, for example. It's grown. Not huge, not famous, but steady. A blacksmith's shop now rings with the clang of iron. Yes, iron. Not bronze. The old ways are dying hard, but iron is coming, creeping in with a metallic hiss, cold and sharp and cheap enough for the average goat thief. Historians still wonder if the Sea Peoples accelerated the Iron Age or just stumbled into it like someone tripping on their own sandal. Either way, here it is. Iron means change. It doesn't look fancy, but it's tough. Durable. A plow made of iron can split hard soil like a hot knife through, well, very tough humus. Tools last longer. Weapons cut deeper. The smith who first worked it? Probably cursed like mad figuring it out. The melting point is higher than bronze, so your average potter's kill wouldn't cut it. Took some clever thinking, or possibly a lot of trial, error, and accidental explosions. But iron isn't the only new material shaping your world. Writing is shifting too. With the fall of palace scribes and their obsession with clay tablets, a new form of script is bubbling up, simpler, alphabet-based. Traders and ordinary folk are picking it up. It's still clumsy, still evolving, but it'll get there. In fact, some scholars will one day argue that the very chaos you helped unleash forced this evolution, because who's got time to learn 600 cuneiform signs when your house just burned down and your goat's in a bad mood? Less bureaucracy, more practicality. It's the unofficial motto of the post-bronze world. You sit at the communal hearth one night, watching the younger ones argue about whether it's better to hunt boar with a spear or trap it with bait. One insists he can tame it. The others laugh until they wheeze. It hits you, suddenly, this is your legacy. Not the battles. Not the sea raids. But this. The rebuilding. The arguing over livestock. The festivals with terrible singing and accidentally fermented turnip juice. That's the real story. And the broader region? It's in flux. To the north, Assyria is stirring. They sat out the worst of the chaos, and now they're gearing up to become, well, something. You've heard whispers of their armies, disciplined, ruthless, fond of flaying. Bit much, honestly. But they are organized, and that's rare these days. To the west, Cyprus survived surprisingly well. You remember Cyprus, white cliffs, copper mines, smugglers who could charm your sandals off. It became a sort of middle ground, not entirely destroyed, not quite untouched. You traded there once. Still dream about that dried fig pie. Further west, people are beginning to settle into new rhythms, villages becoming city-states, isolated islands rekindling trade. Greece, you're told, is entering a dark age, though that term won't be invented for a couple thousand years. It just means things are quieter, less centralized. Heroes become myths. Myths become bedtime stories. You feel that, too. The shift from living history to whispered legend. One of the elders in your village, a weathered man with a voice like sandpaper, likes to sit by the fire and tell wild tales of the sea, how you all came in waves, swift and hungry, gods at your back, fire in your wake. He talks about the old battles like they happened yesterday. You're in some of his stories. Except you definitely never fought a three-headed lion, and you don't remember glowing eyes. You don't correct him. Because here's the thing, myth matters. It fills the spaces between the facts. It softens the edges, stitches up the holes. And when people don't leave behind scrolls or statues, myth is what survives. And speaking of myth, you hear a traveler mention a new tale rising from Canaan. A boy, a giant, a stone, a single, perfect shot. You chuckle into your grain stew. Slings take real practice, you know from experience. But hey, you like a good underdog story as much as anyone. Besides, some say that giant was a Philistine. And if that's true, well, the Sea Peoples have officially joined the eternal pantheon of bad guys and boogeymen. Congratulations? But you're not mad about it. If your people are to be remembered as invaders, so be it. At least they'll be remembered. In stories. In ruins. In shards of painted pottery that future archaeologists will piece together with tweezers and too much coffee. You rise slowly, joints creaking, the night pressing in like a warm blanket. Tomorrow there's a well to reinforce. A stubborn goat to reshoe. A child who insists she saw a spirit in the hills and wants you to go check. And maybe you will. After all, the world is still filled with mystery. Some of it ancient. Some of it brand new. And as you tuck into your sleeping mat, staring at the woven reeds above your head, a final thought drifts through you. The Sea Peoples didn't just end an age. They ushered in a new one. And you were there, raider, refugee, settler, survivor, right at the heart of it. You wake to the scent of damp earth and freshly baked flatbread. Someone's already up, kneading dough with the kind of sleepy rhythm that means they've been doing it forever. You stretch, bones creaking like old rigging, and shuffle toward the noise of morning. Children squabbling over honey dates, someone feeding the fire, a sleepy rooster who forgot it's supposed to crow at dawn, not mid-yawn. It's quiet. Not peaceful exactly, but settled. Like the world has finally exhaled after holding its breath for 100 years. You sit with your breakfast, bread, olives, cheese so sharp it might file your teeth down, and let your mind wander. These days, the stories you tell aren't about conquest or ships cutting across the sea. They're quieter, more grounded. Less epic destiny, more don't step on the chicken, she's nesting again. But the past still visits. Sometimes, you dream of the ships, those dark silhouettes against firelit coasts. You remember the shouting, the clamor, the sick twist in your gut before a raid. And sometimes, when the wind hits just right, you swear you hear oars slapping water, even though your village is well inland now. And you wonder, what happened to everyone else? Not the ones you know, your neighbors, the farmer with the questionable beard, the ex-raider who now teaches weaving and insists his tapestries tell better stories than bones ever could. You mean the others? The Sea Peoples scattered across the Mediterranean like sand flung by an angry god. Some became Philistines. That's no longer a question. It's fact. Archaeological finds confirm it. Burials with Aegean-style pottery, weapons, and ornaments from far-off shores. Their language faded, but their memory etched itself into the very soil of the Levant. Others? It gets murkier. Historians still debate whether tribes like the Tjeka, Shekelesh, and Denyen simply disappeared, or if they melted into the local populations, their names forgotten but their bloodlines continuing in the people selling fish in the market, or tending vines in sun-drenched hillsides. There's even a theory that some Sea Peoples might have helped forge the early foundations of what will become the Phoenician culture. You smile at that. Phoenicians will be known for their ships, their trade routes, their alphabets. Feels like poetic justice, really, if descendants of raiders end up inventing written language just to keep better receipts. And then there are the even weirder theories. Some scholars think the Denyen were connected to the later Greek Danans, the ones in Homer's Iliad. Yes, that Homer, the blind poet who turned blood-soaked history into bedtime epic. Others point fingers further west, suggesting links between the Shekelesh and Sicily, or the Shardana and Sardinia. Could you be descended from the people who gave the world its first pizza-adjacent dish? You don't know. You just know that you're here. And they are gone. Or rather, they are changed. The thing no one tells you about the end of an age is that it's not an explosion. Not always. Sometimes it's a slow crumble, like a sandcastle melting under a lazy tide. Palaces vanish. Gods are forgotten. But life? Life finds a way to rearrange the pieces. You walk through your village later, past the olive press and the new water channel the elders are very proud of. Someone singing a song you haven't heard since childhood. You pause, listening, half tempted to join in. But you let it pass, like a ghost brushing your sleeve. There's something new in the air. Not just rain or harvest season or the usual goat-based drama. Something big. You overhear traders talking about new alliances. Of a resurgent Assyria flexing its muscles. Of Egypt turning inward, clinging to its temples and rituals like a drowning man to a gold-plated raft. Of wandering prophets preaching monotheism in the hills, where once gods came in dozens, each one louder than the last. You hear someone mention the name Israel. A kingdom now. Not a loose band of tribes, but a real place with kings and borders and ambition. You rub your chin. You remember when they were just a stubborn, scrappy people with odd eating rules and excellent lentils. Time has passed. And you? You've become a storyteller. Not professionally, of course. There's no money in it. But the children gather when you speak, wide-eyed and squirming on reed mats, especially when you start with, "When I was your age, we didn't have roads, we had possibilities." You tell them of ships with curved necks, of starless nights at sea, of cities burning, of gods shouting from mountaintops. You tell them of lost brothers, found families, and the strange way the sea can smell different depending on what you're running from. But you don't tell them everything. You leave out the parts that still ache. The cold mornings when you buried friends. The look in a mother's eyes as she watched her child disappear in the crowd. The sound a city makes when it dies. Some things are yours to carry. And maybe that's the point. You helped end an era. Not alone, but as part of a storm no one saw coming. A storm made not of wind or waves, but of people. Displaced, desperate, determined. You weren't a footnote. You were the ink spilling across the page. And even now, that ink lingers. In every alphabet slowly taking shape. In every iron blade forged in some smoky hut. In every child who grows up hearing about the mysterious people who came from the sea, left the world in ruins, and then, somehow, planted the seeds of something new. You sigh, leaning against the warm wall of your house. The clay still smells of sun. Someone's baking again. You're almost sure it's turnip-based, and you make a note to politely decline. Tomorrow, there will be more work. Fixing a roof. Helping with the olive harvest. Teaching a boy how to patch a net. But tonight? Tonight, you rest. And remember, because the Bronze Age didn't vanish into darkness. It passed through fire. And from its ashes, something stranger, harder, and more human emerged. You helped build it. And the world is still humming with your footprints. You sit on a stone bench at the edge of the village, watching the sunset bleed across the hills like someone spilled molten gold on the sky. The fields sway softly. There's a cart creaking in the distance, someone humming badly but earnestly, and that one dog that always sounds like it's about to give a motivational speech. Life has settled into a rhythm, not the pounding drums of war, but the gentle, repeated beat of planting, harvesting, sleeping, storytelling, and repeating. And you realize, the age of empires may be over, but the age of stories has just begun. You've become the bridge between what was and what will be. Not because you intended to, but because survival often turns ordinary people into accidental legends. And now that the dust has settled from all the burning cities and collapsing temples, people need answers. They look to you, to the others like you, witnesses of the world that was. So, when a trader with a camel that clearly hates him arrives, bearing wine from the east and gossip from the north, you lean in. You listen. The wine is decent, the gossip even better. He tells you that in the ruins of Ugarit, people are scavenging clay tablets. Some can still be read. Names you once feared are now just wedge-shaped symbols on brittle stone. He says they found letters never sent, one even begging for help as the sea peoples closed in. You chuckle softly. Probably your ship. Whoops. He says Egypt survived, but barely. Ramesses III held the line, just. But the Egypt that exists now is smaller. Humbled. Still clinging to its gods and rituals like a moth clings to flame. The great pharaohs? They'll never reach that same dizzying height again. The palaces of Mycenae? Gone. Crumbled into myth. Their kings, Agamemnon, Nestor, Menelaus, blurred into the hazy edges of bedtime stories. You've heard some bards whisper their names like they were gods. Funny, considering how mortal they seemed when their armies broke. You ask the trader about the Hittites. He shakes his head. No one's heard from Hattusa in decades, he says. Some say the gods abandoned it. Others say it was the sea peoples. You sip your wine. The irony tastes like time and smoke. The truth is, history doesn't remember with precision. It remembers with drama. And that's fine. Let the scholars of the future bicker over what really happened. Whether the sea peoples were truly responsible for the Bronze Age collapse, or just one spark in a pile of dry kindling. Let them argue over climate change, over volcanoes, over famine and rebellion and systemic fragility. You lived it. You remember what they won't. You remember the fear, the hunger, the wondering if the ship would ever reach shore. The screaming of foreign tongues. The way children still managed to laugh while everything burned. You remember the resilience. How a people without homes built new ones. How raiders became farmers. How warriors turned into potters, and scribes turned into fishermen, and somehow, against all odds, life didn't just continue, it redefined itself. And yes, the sea peoples left scars. Burned cities. Lost knowledge. 1,000 what-ifs. But they also shook the trees so violently that the fruit scattered and grew wild in places no one expected. Phoenicians will rise. So will new kingdoms in Israel and Judah. The Greeks will slowly stir again, their alphabet borrowed from others, their myths catching flame. And eventually, Rome will step into the clearing with sandals too big and ambition even bigger. But none of that matters right now. Right now, you're watching your neighbor try to teach his pig not to eat the laundry. You're trying to remember if you locked up the tool shed. You're squinting at the horizon, where a new road is being built, iron tools, steady hands, no sign of collapse. And that's how history ends. Not with thunder, but with the quiet thud of a shovel in the dirt, and someone muttering about turnips. Later, as the stars scatter across the sky like tiny forgotten prayers, You sit with a child who refuses to sleep without a story. You clear your throat. And you begin. Once, long ago, the sea boiled with ships. And out of those ships came people who changed everything. They weren't gods. They weren't monsters. Just people, lost, angry, hungry, determined. They came from nowhere and became everyone. The child stares up at you, eyes wide. Did they win? They ask. You smile. They survived, you say. And sometimes, that's the biggest victory of all. And as they drift off, wrapped in that thought, you look up at the stars and whisper one last truth to the night air. We were the storm. And we were the seed. And now, fellow time traveler, your journey is nearly over. The fires have cooled. The sails are furled. The chaos that once churned across the Mediterranean has faded into the hush of a history lesson no textbook can ever truly capture. The sea peoples, those mysterious wanderers of the deep, are no longer strangers. You've walked beside them, fought, fled, feasted, mourned. You've heard the crack of collapsing kingdoms, smelled the smoke of once great cities, and stood in the silence after it all, still breathing. Still here. Let that be your comfort tonight. Because the truth is, every age ends. But every end brings space for something new to grow. So as your breathing slows and your thoughts drift like soft waves across a still sea, remember, no matter how wild the storm, sleep is your harbor. Your calm. Your new beginning. The world may shift again tomorrow. There may be stories to write or goats to chase. But for now, in this perfect hush between past and future, you are safe. You are steady. And somewhere, a sea breeze still carries whispers of oars, of songs, of people who came from nowhere and became part of everything. Sweet dreams, traveler. The journey continues.